Hello, I'm Wayne Garrett, General Manager for Chief Ethanol Fuels, and in this video, we look at how carbon capture works, why it's safe, and what it means for farmers and the future of renewable energy.
Currently, there is a buzzword out there about carbon capture for the ethanol industry. Wayne, can you talk about carbon capture and what it entails?
Yeah, so essentially when we bring the corn into the plant, it brings three main things to us. It brings a starch, it brings a protein, and then it has carbon. As it goes through the fermentation process, that as the fermentation happens, it off-gases CO2. And so currently we scrub that and then it just goes into the atmosphere. So what we'll be doing moving forward is we'll be taking that CO2, capturing it, compressing it, and putting it into a pipeline and transmitting it all the way out to Wyoming, just to store and sequester that. The purpose being to lower the greenhouse gas emissions and the CO2. We're fortunate in that our CO2 is a very pure form of CO2, so we don't take a lot of refining to do anything with it. We do a small amount, what we currently do today, and that's done very simply. And so as a result, we've got this pure form of CO2. We take a lot of it, and now we'll put it sequestered under the ground, 2 miles under the ground out in Wyoming.
There have been times I've heard farmers say, well, doesn't carbon help our crops grow? Don't we need that? Brent, how do you respond to that skepticism?
Thanks, Beth. I think it's a fair question. I mean, we all know that CO2 is needed for crops to grow. And in fact, there are studies indicating that with higher levels of atmospheric CO2 concentration, you can see a yield improvement, especially in hot and arid environments. And we also know that in greenhouses, they will often measure and even enrich CO2 levels to help optimize their production. But I think there's a few caveats we have to put in there. First of all, we have to think about scale. The carbon that we're going to sequester with even this whole pipeline project, all ethanol plants involved, rough math, we're looking at maybe 3 to 6 million tons of CO2 that will be taken out of the atmosphere. Compare that with scientific measurements showing the annual increases globally for carbon in the atmosphere, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and it's on the order of 40 billion tons. So we're comparing 3 to 6 million tons with 40 billion tons. I think in terms of that scale, it's unlikely that we're going to see an immediate effect on corn yield just because of carbon dioxide being taken out of the atmosphere. But I mean, let's go ahead and engage. Let's say that theoretically we reverse that trend and we're going to be having less carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than even last year. Is it possible that we could negatively affect corn yields? I don't think so, but let's just assume for a minute that it could theoretically happen. Even in that case, my opinion is we have to keep other priorities in mind. For example, if we were able to sequester that much CO2, there's still this project is going to have a lot of beneficial impacts on supply, demand, and other market fundamentals. So the bottom line is that the carbon markets will add value to Nebraska ethanol, which in turn adds value to Nebraska corn and likely encourages even more ethanol production. So given our outstanding ability to produce corn in this state, I think that we as an agricultural industry would be remiss to turn away the many market benefits of this project, especially if that decision is made due to an outsized fear of the slight possibility that many, many years down the road, there could be a small impact to yield. The market impacts, I think, will far outweigh those yield concerns.
And so we kind of talked about the corn side of things. How does carbon capture help with the longevity of ethanol production?
Well, carbon capture is one of the most effective things that we can do to reduce our carbon intensity score. No matter your position on the green energy debates, we can't deny that there's absolutely a strong market and demand for renewable energy paired with low carbon intensity. So this gives us benefit from two sides. Number one, it adds value to our ethanol. And number two, it increases demand for our product. It's not often that a market sees an increase in value combined with a long-term increase in demand. So we're very excited about what this means for the prospects of ethanol for the foreseeable future.
And I've also heard recently in conversations about 45Z. Wayne, can you explain a little bit about what 45Z entails and how that might impact the Nebraska ag economy?
Sure. Well, 45Z is a program put in from what was called the Inflation Reduction Act, where it was incentivizing the purpose of lowering carbon intensity through several mechanisms. ethanol being one of those. So we're able to take the carbon, the excess carbon, if you will, or pure form of carbon, and do something with it. And it's incentivized that behavior to capture it, utilize it, and a number of different things. But most appealing and most requested is to do the capturing and sequestration of it. So we'll be doing that as we go forward through our what we've done at both plants in Hastings and in Lexington, where we have capture facilities under construction now, be operational here by the end of 2025, and we'll have those in place to send those down the pipelines.
And Brent, is there a pass-through benefit to the corn producers in the Nebraska market due to carbon capture?
Of course. So as we know, Nebraska is the only state with a carbon pipeline plan of this size and structure. And that gives us a leg up on neighboring states. I've had the opportunity to speak with other ethanol producers in other states, and they found that just the word pipeline causes a lot of opposition in their states, and opposition that it's going to be tough to overcome. So here in Nebraska, that's going to give ethanol in Nebraska a serious advantage. And when our ethanol is worth more, we as an ethanol plant are obviously going to want to produce more ethanol. So this will all be reflected in the corn basis market. I hate to say it, but there have been years, even recently, where a good portion of our corn in Nebraska got exported down to Kansas due to local market demand. Sometimes this can reach a point where some ethanol plants have to curtail production. Not at Chief, of course, but because there's economics that aren't friendly in the basis market, maybe that means that we grind less corn in Nebraska. So with carbon capture, if we add that to the mix, I as a buyer will have a lot more incentive to bid higher on basis so that we can keep the plant running at maximum production. The effect of all this could likely be that now Kansas or Iowa or South Dakota are now shipping corn to us. And we're not just going to be competing with Kansas feedlots now, we're competing with other ethanol plants that are also on the carbon pipeline. So in effect, this inevitably causes basis for those producers closer to Nebraska ethanol plants to see higher prices for their corn.
And I know we were talking about the sequestration of carbon, but that's not really the only thing that's being looked at. Wayne, can you talk about other pieces that are being looked at for carbon capture?
Sure. One of the things, as I mentioned, was utilization. And so utilization is just taking that CO2 and doing things that we know and use and see today. For instance, the carbonation that's in our beverages, our soft drinks, right? It's also in fire extinguishers. It's in a number of different things. So the utilization is going beyond that, though. There's places that'll use it in concrete as a replace. So there's places that'll use it to make hydrogen or methane or a number of other different types of products, renewable products or other products consumed. So there's several things that can be done with it. As a smart chemist told me a long time ago, you can do anything you want to with CO2. It just takes a lot of energy to do it. But they're getting innovative to do things less energy to do something with the CO2.
And Brent, you made a comment earlier just about people's concern with the capturing of and using a pipeline for it. What is happening to ensure the safety of that pipeline and how that's all working?
Sure. Well, I'll start answering that question by saying that I'm not speaking on behalf of Tallgrass, of course. Anything that I say shouldn't be taken as official word from them. But with that said, I have had the opportunity to attend a lot of community meetings and forums where a lot of these concerns and questions have been addressed. And first thing I would tell you is that these pipelines are going to be embedded with pressure sensors throughout the system. If pressure irregularities are detected, measures will be taken long before critical limits are set to curtail that CO2 flowing through the pipeline. The automatic sensors are further backed up by manual shutoffs if needed, and constant monitoring from trucks, planes, and even drones that have humans behind them checking out the system. In the unlikely event that if incident does occur, it's important to keep in mind that CO2 is classified as a non-flammable, non-poisonous, non-toxic gas. Nonetheless, the same tactical equipment used to fight a fire in your home would also be used for a CO2 incident. Water from first responders would likely be used to effectively disperse the CO2 gas.
And right now, carbon capture is definitely a buzzword in the industry, but Chief didn't start talking about this just yesterday or a couple months ago. This has been conversations that's happened for months and months and years over the last couple of years that we've had. But what people see is this construction happening down in Hastings and the pipeline being built. So it seems like it's only been a few months. And when we think about that from the ideation stage to what's happening now, what's most impressive to you, Wayne, of how this is moving forward?
Yeah, you really get a thing of a sense, or maybe not a sense, but you get to see in practice the when you do the ready fire or ready aim fire technique, or the planning in advance that's done. And so it was kind of like a duck on top of the water. It looked like it was just floating along, but there was a lot of activity happening below the water. And it was all this planning, all this engineering, all this execution. And so when it came time to break ground and start on it, there's a 34-week build cycle. And they are on target on this 34-week build cycle. So it's moved a couple of days one way or the other. Lexington's a little further ahead by a couple, 3 days, and Hastings a little behind by a couple, 3 days. But regardless, it's amazing and interesting to see this happen as it goes along. So all the planning that happened in the front and seeing the execution to today, and as I said, it's going to be running here first part of November in 2025.
So there's been a lot that goes into this. Is there any one thing that you're most excited about with the future?
Well, anytime you take a plant like ours, especially in Hastings, that's a 40-year-old plant, there's you're bringing things to modernize the plant. And so on top of just this CO2 plant, the carbon capture facility, we're doing a number of other things beyond that. But to see this in action, to see what we're doing, and to show how this incentive that's happened, we're taking advantage of it. We're going to benefit our local producers. We're going to drive that value back to them, in whatever shape it is. But it gives us a longer runway to sell more valuable ethanol than currently we are today. And that's just going to get better from here on.
Well, I know there's lots of conversations, lots of things happening in the ethanol world, and specifically with cheap ethanol. So it's super exciting to hear what you guys have to say. You know what the market is needing, what they're wanting, what their concerns are. But it's really exciting to see that you're moving forward, and this is going to be an amazing thing coming to life really soon.
Very much so.
Appreciate the conversation.
To learn more about our latest innovations here at Chief Ethanol, check out our website. The link is in the description.